and myself, Principal Solution Engineer, covering AdminStudio and application packaging deployment. I'll kick it off to you guys.
Alrighty. Thanks, Mike. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May edition of AdminStudio Experts Roundtable, and we got a special session planned today. And we got our guest with us, Amit Sharma, who heads our AI and ML practice at Flexera, right? And there was a special reason why we invited Amit over here. We've been talking about the entire world has been talking about AI, and we are no different at Flexera. We do a lot of things with AI. We use AI internally, and we are unapologetic about the advances that AI actually brings into workflows. So the reason why we wanted to focus on a couple of topics before we jump into what AdminStudio is focusing on, is we wanted to share what we do at Flexera with AI. So I would request Amit to take the stage, and then help our users understand how AI is being leveraged at Flexera, what we're trying to do with AI for our customers.
Sure. Thank you, Venkat. Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about AI at Flexera first, and AI has taken the world by storm, like Venkat talked about, and Flexera is not an exception. At Flexera, we are building AI-based solutions as much as we are using AI to improve our own productivity at both engineering, product, and practices at large. So in terms of building product capabilities using AI, what we look for are three basic premises. You can see that we are talking about data first AI strategy. When we say that, we mean that data is front and center, and this is not there's not much AI you can do without good data. So the focus is always in building a very strong, reliable and secure data set so that we can use that to provide the insights and recommendations and actions based off of that. And into doing that, not only we use data to build a great AI based solution, we also use AI to keep our data up to date. Flexera, as you know, is a lot about the catalog data that we have, and we use AI to make sure that it stays up to date, fresh with the agentic AI controls that we have in place. The second big thing, which is front and center for us, is customer focus. Obviously, we are looking at building customer value using AI. But one thing I want to call out here is when you build things with AI, AI is no more something that you need to do a lot to learn. It's just an API away, like I keep saying. So you can call an LLM just by invoking an API. But the problem with such a commoditization of AI is that you also have the risks that come along with it. Anyone can build an AI solution, which means we have to put extra guardrails and securities and observability in place to make sure that we don't breach with respect to our customers any of the guardrails or any of the hard lines that we don't want to step over. So, for example, governance and compliance are front and center. We have all the right constructs in place to build enterprise-grade AI. We'll talk more about that as we go along. And last but not the least, we are future-focused. AI is moving very fast, as we have seen. What used to be just a chatbot application a couple of years back is now being talked about as agentic automation, autonomous actions. These are being talked about so much. We know there are two areas where this will evolve a lot in. One is letting our customers and partners build capabilities using what we provide in the form of MCP servers. This is the way every SaaS company is moving. Apart from offering up their solutions through the UI user interface, MCP support. MCP is the modern day API equivalent for customers' LLMs. So customers bring their models and they query up the data using MCPs tools and thereby build an ecosystem where they can use Flexera's data and build solutions on top of it. And the second thing is building interfaces which are natural language driven. They are new ways of working, because what used to be go to a menu, then to a sub menu, and then hit a dashboard, and then figure out what you need to find out, has very quickly changed into asking a question and getting the answers upfront. Or even not that. Even before you ask the question, you are presented with insights and recommendations that you need to see and act on. So these are the three pillars of our AI strategy, and front and center for what we do on the front AI front. Venkat.
Thanks, Amit. I think one thing which I wanted to touch base with you is also that while the consumer part of the AI, which I typically call as either using a ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot for personal reasons. Okay, it's one angle of it. Okay, there is also the enterprise angle to it. Where there is an enterprise use case or a customer problem that we try to solve. As a consumer, I really have no real qualms in just going ahead and asking a question to ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude. But then one of the things that we keep seeing or running into is these conversations with our customers on am I ready as an enterprise for AI, right? Am I ready to consume the data that a vendor tooling is actually providing me, from which is using AI as its backbone to provide me some data or actions for that matter,
Right.
So this is one area which I wanted to talk to you about on what your opinion is about where we are, given we are probably an year and a half into the AI disruption, I would call it, right? Where we are in 2026, how enterprises are in a position to consume AI-based use cases.
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and becomes more pertinent in the light of the fact that AI is not just promising to dispense data, it's promising to offer recommendations and go even a step further and do the things for you using agentic action. So it's natural for customers or users to think of, am I ready to take on this kind of automation already? Or where on the trust curve I am? And you're flashing the slide here. So looking at it, I can tell you that it is a journey, not a step function that you simply decide overnight that now I'm ready for AI and I'm gonna use all the AI tools at my disposal or a SaaS AI-based SaaS application. One has to, as a customer, be mindful of, in using AI, is it the anti-pattern of bandwagon effect that, hey, I'm using AI because everyone else is, or they're actually looking at a business value? This is 101 of, I would say, using anything, but sometimes with AI, unfortunately, the shiny new toy actually takes over the value part more than the, what it should be. So it's very important that customers and users ask, what am I using it for? Is the purpose genuine? And once I've answered that question, the couple of things that one needs to think about in terms of trusting the AI solution. One is, what data is the AI solution going to use? Whatever I'm going to, how is it using my data? So the question they should ask is, what data is it going to access? Do I have an option to opt out as a customer? If it uses certain data, how does it use it? And is my data going to be safe, secure? And earlier I was talking about, these are the kind of concerns in any enterprise-grade solution. As a provider, we have to think through and make those options available to the customer. So when they ask, can I opt out? They can make a very informed decision about what does it mean to opt out and what does it mean if they opt in terms of their data being used and utilized to offer value. Third thing is obviously data security. But getting over the data privacy and security concerns, let us talk about what makes any solution, I would say, trustworthy. One is the consistency. The word hallucination has probably will resonate with everyone, but any AI solution is a probabilistic model, right? So there is a chance that it gives you one solution in one go and a little different one. How deterministic can we make it? How consistent, reliable we can make it makes up for a lot of trust in the system. And those basics don't change when we look at AI-based solutions. In fact, more so, because with AI, there's a lot of focus on, am I getting a consistent, reliable, accurate information? And when I'm getting that, what are my confidence intervals? In layman terms, we are talking about what is the range of error margin of error that I can associate with this kind of solution. Providers should be very careful in offering up a disclaimer saying this is the AI-based solution. Wherever the AI is used, it should be flashed upfront. It should not be hidden thing that AI has been used but is not known to the customer. At the same time, they offer up confidence scores. They offer up workflow paths where users can choose to give a feedback to the UI about the AI solution. They can also decide whether or not to use it based on the confidence score itself. Last but not the least, there is a thing called explainability, and we all know, right? So how does one trust an AI solution is largely based on the fact that if they have a transparency about how does it work in the first place? Like, why is it giving me a recommendation like, let's turn off your server on EC2 instance in Northeast Ohio somewhere? The question is, it is because it should say, for the fact that it has been lying idle for the last 18 hours, and over the next couple of days, you will incur so much of a cost that we are recommending, the AI is recommending the shutdown, will help build that trust. And you know what, that trust eventually gets into the point where, starting with questioning how is AI going to use my data, you start trusting the recommendation, and eventually you will also lead it to saying that for such problems, you can go ahead and turn off the server automatically, because idle servers cost me a bomb. And if you turn it off, the price of having turned off a server, in the rare chance that it will not be the right thing to do, is very little compared to the benefit I get. So this entire trade-off has to be understood by customers. And like I said, this is a journey, so it takes its while. And it's very important that apart from data security, privacy, and everything else, these are taken care of. One last thing I'll add before handing it back to you, Venkat, is nowadays cost is unit economics of any AI solution has to be considered in very seriousness and high. The fact is, many times people adopt AI without realizing the business value in the light of the cost it will incur. Can I bring my own model, or do I have to use the model provided by the provider? And if I'm using either, how will the cost be calculated? Will I have a visibility into the cost? And will I know when it is, beyond a point, or how the economics will work out? With cost, data security, opt-in, opt-out features, and confidence score explainability, one can build a huge amount of trust and go through this journey of checking everything to checking a few things, and just spot checking a few things to actually approving all the actions that AI is recommending. And this will happen over a period of time. So I'll take a pause here and take on any questions, Venkat.
Yeah, that's quite a lot. I think you tried to connect the previous one we were talking about, flexible strategy around building MCP servers, okay, which goes into maybe this a word on its own or a theme on its own, where you start saying, bring your own AI, and then start interacting systems that offer data, and but I'm not reliant on an LLM which is provided by my vendor, but I use my own LLM to process the data, right? So that's a good perspective, I think. So let me ask a flipped question here, Amit. As let's say you are in one of our customer's shoes, right? You are leading any section of an IT operations team. It could be a packaging team, or it could be a SAM practice, or it could be a security practice. Any of those enterprise IT practices, right? So what questions would ask a vendor? Okay, if a vendor comes to you and says, hey, I have a new AI feature, go turn it on and then start using it, right? So what questions would you typically ask a vendor?
We do ask some questions. Like I said, the questions are around starting with what is the business value, which I ask myself. To the provider, we ask what data are you going to use? How are you going to use that data? And am I going to have a visibility into how the decisions are being made? How long are you going to retain my data? Is my data going to be used for creating a model which is also going to help other customers? This can be a bargaining chip also for you in terms of price negotiation. How much will it cost me? Will I have a transparency into that? So all the things that I talked about are the questions that must be asked before. And obviously things around governance and compliance, including GDPR and region-based serving of model. Is it likely? How is my model likely to be poisoned by anyone else? It's very common lately. Until you take care of it in a very explicit manner, Venkat, your model can be by a couple of bad actors working together, taught to understand something which is actually wrong. And then it will not only respond in a wrong manner to those customers, but also respond in a wrong way to other customers, because it has learned the new ways of working which are explicitly done with a bad intent. So how do you prevent that? How do you prevent hallucination? Are you cross-validating, cross-checking? Are you grounding it right? So these are some questions we ask them. How are you handling hallucinations and stuff? And we have to have our own evaluation also in place. Even though the providers may say, all is hunky-dory, I would say never trust a solution blindly to take it to the third level, which is everything is autonomous. In fact, any such promises made is a red flag in the first place. What you want to see is the vendor telling you, you can run it in parallel, look at the recommendations, then you can decide to actionize some of them, and eventually you can actionize more and more as the confidence score changes. But to your point, these are the questions I would ask before taking on a new solution.
Thanks, Amit. I think, so now flipping it.
Well, I was going to say, Venkat, before we do, sorry, Charles asked a question. I think that's just what you were touching on, Amit. It says, you mentioned earlier, you can potentially opt out of an AI, but the question is, if you do opt out, how can you verify this? And then he also asked, is there a possibility you may introduce a malware or some type of vulnerability in your environment? Or as you said, some bad actors can poison your AI. So I guess, what do you think around those?
Oh, that's a great question, Charles, and appreciate you asking it. These typically opt-in, opt-out are contractual terms and conditions which both parties sign up for before AI solution is provisioned or used. So that kind of safeguards to a good extent. But beyond a point, it's company's reputation at stake if they tell you are opted out of your data being used and they still use it for, let's say, a benchmarking or a baselining. So technically, it is possible, but I would say the contractual agreement should keep us safe on that front. To the other point about, is there a possibility you may introduce a malware? Yeah, that's what I was kind of alluding to when I said that unless it's done right, there is every chance that the model, if it's, let's say, training itself on the customer feedback live, and it doesn't have the right guardrails in terms of it trains itself from every other feedback that it got. It doesn't have I would say statistical significance kind of a channeling before it learns something. It might end up from one bad actor at one customer or a couple of bad actors from a single customer or posing as customers, something which can poison the entire model. So this is where we have to check with providers, like how are you ensuring that the model poisoning doesn't happen, or how are you ensuring prompt injection doesn't happen? How are you ensuring that my data doesn't get leaked to another customer by a way of manipulating the model? So these are the questions we need to ask. And as when we build using AI, a AI provider must have answers to these questions. Like, no, we reset the context every time we build these models or deploy these models. We have a model per customer, per tenant, which is also another good way. It's a little costly, but a clean way to keep these discussions, conversations secluded from each other, and in a way, almost a physical guardrail against malicious intents. Thanks.
So if you convert that to a policy question, I think I'm just piggybacking on what Charles is asking, what Mike was trying to say. If you try to convert that to a policy question, how can we provide, to what extent a vendor can provide transparency on what they're trying to do with the data and what kind of guardrails they're actually trying to put in place for the data to not be reused, or we're not we're not using anything that can potentially act like a prompt injection. So to what extent the transparency can be provided to a customer?
I think, the ultimate proof is in the code itself, because that's the only way to know. But hey, the same goes for SQL injection. If you asked a vendor, how are you preventing SQL injection? They might show you a certification of a penetration test, which includes web scarab and all the kind of tests they have done to ensure that it doesn't happen. I think those are the validation results we can show, obviously not the code, but there are standard design patterns to deal with these, to your point, Venkat. And I would say a declaration of those plus a proof of having tested for such things is good enough for most part. So what vendors typically do is have all these test results and evidence of all the things they claim to have in their trust center, which they share with customers. And customers can verify, those prospective customers also, and say that, hey, I think we are fine because they seem to have done the right testing. They've checked for bias, fairness, and so many other things also, including the policy issues they talked about. I think no one's going to share the code for sure, but these are things which can go to the extent of assuring the users as much as they can.
All right. Okay, thanks a lot, Amit. I think that's. I think we'll probably spend a little more time on the enterprise AI adoption, or how AI travels us through the trust curve, okay, in the consumption part, right? So thanks a lot for your inputs. So let's quickly talk, or move on to what we have in store for today, which is what we are currently working on, okay. And I'll also in all candor share what Amit has talked about on the right hand side part of it. But we have been heavily investing on providing customer value to our customers and leveraging AI in ways where it actually makes sense. Okay, there is no AI just for the heck of AI. We are very deliberate about it. We waited. We had several internal, discussions about, hey, we need an AI feature out there. No, we need a problem that can be solved with AI only, right? So that's the motto that we went with. And after a lot of customer feedback, we started getting these, use cases that you see to on the left-hand side here, which is the first one being, smart PowerShell wrapping. So there are a couple of use cases here in the first one. And the second one, the PSADT migration, is about how we can augment our AdminStudio's app model data, the app model that gets ingested into AdminStudio, which can be complemented with the PowerShell script that has in carrying forward the customizations that people would have written in their PSADT scripts from one version to another. This was the first use case which we introduced last year, where we take a given version of an application and then use its PowerShell script, and then add AI layer on top of it, augment it with the app model data that is available with AdminStudio, and then make the changes that are required for a subsequent version of the product. Right, and in this entire process can be completely automated. This helps packages go ahead from version 1 to version 2 as fast as they can without compromising the quality of the code and the customizations that have actually been done. And we started introducing it. Customers were, we got feedback that it is great and it really works. But then we also have certain very old PowerShell scripts written on PSADT 3.x, right? So can you do something for them by migrating the scripts over to a compatible version for 4.x, and that's where we have just released AdminStudio 2026 R2 release, which has this capability where it can migrate scripts that are on a previous version of PSADT, which can be now used along with the same lines as PowerShell wrapping, and they can be migrated to the latest version of 4.x using the latest PowerShell commanders that are available in the 4.x version. And in addition to this, we also are to Amit's point on AI is not just about actions. AI is not just about certain information or recommendations. So what we're also trying to do is we're trying to provide certain insights to our users where the application is not available with us completely. As you all know, we have a data pack which is called a package feed module, which helps you with an application metadata like application data, application information. There is a install command line or install command line, and where the application is actually sourced from and all other details. However, there are, we understand that, PFM or the data pack that we have, cannot obviously conquer the entire application, universe. So for that, for those applications that are not covered by package feed module, we have something called as AI App Insights, where we'd be able to leverage AI and then provide you certain information on the application where it can be sourced from and what we think, could be the install command line and uninstall command line. And in addition to this, we added one more feature in in our R2 release, where we also try to gather some publicly available information on any problems with the application and how we can solve them as well. Like for example, there is a known issue on Google Chrome particular version that the community is talking about. We'd want to surface that and cherry pick those details and share with you in a brand new section that we added in the App Insights called Community Bus, where you'd be able to have easy access to any problems known for the particular application version. Right, so that's what we have today. But the future, I would wait for this, and I'm being very candid as a product manager of AdminStudio. I would wait for the trust curve to migrate towards the last one, which is Act, and then we would go ahead and start taking the next steps towards how we can leverage AI for completely autonomous packaging and how agents can actually be deployed into the packaging workflows. So with that said, I think I would like to hand off to Mike, where we wanted to do a complete showcase of what we have in AdminStudio with respect to AI, and here's a few demos. Over to you, Mike. So while you do this, I think I'll take a couple of questions, Mike. I think, is there any special license required to start using AI in Flexera? I think this is from Indira. So the AI features are available on our enterprise license, Indira, and everybody. So, if you have an enterprise license, you would get the AI features automatically. There is no new edition that is being added. We want users to realize as much value from existing editions of AdminStudio. Yeah, all yours, Mike.
You're mute.
Still on mute, Mike.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, sorry about that. All right. So the first one is, when you're preparing an application, it's always good to have some information about the application on which you're preparing. So this is where the app insights come from. We've got at the top here, we've got the app summary. So it gives you some information about the application, some background. So I think most people know what iTunes are, but for more obscure applications, you may not. It's got some information about, in this case, where if you want to learn more about the application in general, and the download page, we've got the install and uninstall commands, this being an MSI. So it's got the MSI exec install and uninstall commands, but for an executable, it may have, helpful switches to know. And this is where what's new is the community buzz. So this is the section that Svenkat said is we're collecting information from various different sources, like Super User and Stack Overflow, and providing you links to those posts about information that's relevant for the application in question. So here's a couple of helpful posts about preparing iTunes for enterprise deployment. And then if I go over to Snagit here, you can see different course information about this application. So a summary of Snagit, some resources from the vendor, install and uninstall command line options, and then community buzz articles about preparing Snagit for the enterprise and some challenges around silent installation and hotkey conflicts. So relevant for Snagit. So this is helpful, just upfront knowledge about the application and potential challenges you may face. So it's always good to have that information. So that's one area, that's App Insights. Two, this is about PowerShell wrapping specifically and going from one application to another version, as it were. So I've got two different versions of the PZIP application, and they've been wrapped in PowerShell. This was the previous version, the 10.5.0 that I had. And if you're familiar with PowerShell, and this is an older version of PowerShell, but the same applies in both cases. So there's some placeholder values. We come out with a template that comes with AdminStudio that has some placeholder values that when we wrap an application, those placeholders automatically get replaced with the relevant information like app vendor, name, version, architecture. So those automatically get switched over for any application. But we do have, in this case, some relevant specific customizations made to the wrapper that's specific for this application. So I added a couple options here for PZIP. In this case, we have some hard-coded paths, which you probably want to use variables to variabilize that. But in this case, we got some hard-coded paths with some version information in there. And so if I want to use this as a basis for, if I want to wrap the next version of PZIP, I don't necessarily want to have to go back and add these customizations over again, right? So generic template helps in the initial wrapping, but if there's a lot of customizations I have to make for a specific application, then there's still work to do. So what we're leveraging here is AI to say, when you wrap the next version of, in this case, PZIP, I can point it to the PowerShell wrapper for the previous version and kind of use that as the template. So here we've got the version 10.5 that we were just looking at on the left here in Beyond Compare. And we got the version 10.61 here. And you can see there's some differences, but those are just the placeholder values that would have gotten updated anyway. But if I go further down, I can see there's a lot of other customizations that reference the version number that need to be updated. AI interpreted that and used that to update the new version with the relevant changes. So it understands through context, it understands what the version numbers are and migrates that over. So the whole point is you wrap an application on a specific version the first time with PowerShell, you make your customizations, and then when it comes to every version after that, we can use AI to help you repackage or rewrap the new versions, leveraging all the customizations you've made with the previous version. So you don't have to redo that work over again. So do the work once, and then with AI's help, AdminStudio can help you prepare every version after that. So that's also available today. That's been available in a while. And something we just introduced with AdminStudio 2026 R2, we heard a lot of folks, some have been using PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit for a while. And in this case, I've got FileZilla, but this is the old 3x format. And PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit went to the new 4, and really the 4.1 made a lot of changes too. So if you're familiar with PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit, this is following the old version of the format, and you can see it's version 3.92. And so if I want to migrate over to the new latest version of PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit, I typically would have to redo that work. So what we've added is a migrate to latest PSADT. We can detect what version of the PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit's used, and we can point to the target version, which is the current release. We have a couple different migration modes. So folder level migration, that's not going to just update the script, but the entire folder structure that a PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit script would use. So I can migrate everything, or I can choose just to migrate in essence, the PS1 file from the older 3x to the 4x format. And then I have an output directory, and then by default, I'll automatically import that into the application catalog here in AdminStudio. And we're letting you know we're using some AI-assisted capabilities for that. So it gives you a summary. This is what I'm about to do. I'm going to migrate this particular application from version 3.9.2 to 4.1.8. And I did speed this up a little bit. This is a video. This one took about a minute. So not too bad, but sped it up for the purposes of this call. But it performed that migration, and I can hit finish, and you can see the new versions there. And if I open up that script, I can see it's been migrated into the new format for PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit. So it's using the new format. It moved all the information over to it. If I had any customizations that were part of that previous version, all that got migrated to. So it's not just a base, generic version migration. It'll take all those customizations. Similarly to going from one version of an application to another in the same PowerShell version, this migrated the logic itself, and you can see it's been imported, and so it's alongside of the application. So if you're looking to migrate from 3x to 4, this will really speed up that process. So that's available as of today in the R2. And we thought we'd show you one more thing in the tradition of Apple and others. So we have a capability that's coming out in a future release, and it's leveraging AI automation to help with the capture and the packaging process. So this is leveraging the conversion wizard in AdminStudio, which is available today. The conversion wizard uses what's called the automated application converter. That's a tool that's been in AdminStudio for a while, and it allows AdminStudio to talk to different virtual machine hypervisors like Microsoft Hyper-V, VMware Workstation, and VMware vSphere. It also works with Azure virtual machines as well. And it can automate the process of spinning up a virtual machine, setting to the right snapshot, copy the package in there, and then going through a capture process leveraging our repackager. So in this case, it chose EXE, and I want to migrate that to a MSIX application. And I've logged into the virtual machine here to show you that typically, and how it used to work is that if you had the silent command line switches for this application, then it can be run completely unattended and you wouldn't have to interact with it. But if the application, if you didn't have the silent command line switches, didn't know what they were, or the application installer just does not support silent installation, it requires the user to walk through it, then you'd have to log into the virtual machine and walk through it. So there's some time savings of spinning the machine up and copying the package in there and launching it, but you still typically would have to walk through it. And what we're adding here is from this point forward, I'm not actually clicking anything. We actually there's an AI agent that's running, and it reads all the dialog boxes and interprets it and knows what to do. So it's clicking next, it's clicking I agree to the license terms. It's going to accept the destination folder. It's going to choose what options are available. So this is AI walking through. It's going to select the create shortcut on desktop for me. That's what I wanted. So it's walking through the installation, knowing what I want, and going through the capture process that way. So for applications that would typically require, IT expert, somebody to walk through the installation, now we can have an AI agent walk through that process for you. So even if you don't know the silent command line switches, or like I said, it doesn't support it, no worries. You can still run this completely unattended. So that speeds that process up and brings another use case that would typically require manual interaction. We can automate that through AI. So once the capture process is done, the capture gets downloaded, the virtual machine gets shut off, and I can see here that the process has been finished successfully, and I can hit finish here, and I can see the MSIX application show up in the catalog. So yeah, what we've been doing multiple times is trying to find where users have to interact with the process manually and automate it through AI. So that's another one that's coming soon. All right.
Thanks. I think thanks a lot for sharing that. I would also add a couple of things there, which is the the one that you showed at the end, the sneak peek at how AI can really transform repackaging, where you do not really understand or know the silent command line switches, right? So there is also an intention to get the actual process back. I think we have a feature implemented where we'll be able to record the entire process. So it will be complemented and augmented with the entire recording step, and then users will be able to see what exactly are the steps being actually taken without explicitly going into the machine and seeing throughout the repackaging process. So that way it will actually be a completely lights off repackaging for those packages that you really do not know or aware of. And in that context, I like a question coming in here, okay, which is for this option, is there a way to interrupt the AI agent to change different options to be selected? I love the use case. We'll start looking at how we can do this, but this is definitely not available today. But I think that's one more good angle to say, hey, there is a default options being chosen, by the AI agent on what it thinks should be the right steps to click next. But if I want to, as a packager, want to control what needs to be chosen, we'll take into account on how we can accomplish that. Thank you. So with that, we will quickly do a skim through. I think as usual for every roundtable, we also do a readout of what we have just released and what our focus areas are for the next quarter. So for those who have just joined this time or do not know, we have switched to a quarterly release cadence in 2026. So we would have regular predictable releases, one in February, one in May, the next one will come in August, and the next one will come in November, right? So for the May release, this is what's new in AdminStudio 2026 R2. So we'll have 2026 R1 through R4 all through the year. The first one is support for PSADT 4.1, it's pretty straightforward, needing no explanation. And the second one is repackaging in sandbox. While we understand that for fully configured repackaging setups, you would want to go ahead and configure a VM that has a pre-post installation steps, and our existing automatic converter would really be a good value add there. But sometimes you'd want to do a quick repackaging with the native Windows tooling, right? Windows provides something called as a sandbox, and there is absolutely no reason for you to, set up a completely different Hyper-V or a VMware vSphere and then say, hey, go do my repackaging only here, because the sandbox environment is supposed to be as clean as any other environment, for repackaging purposes. So this is an option that we've introduced in R2, where you can just right click and then say repackage in sandbox, and it would just spin up the sandbox on your own AdminStudio machine, and performs the repackaging process, captures the entire process, and then sends it back to the AdminStudio's machine, and all the repackaging output is automatically imported into the catalog. And a couple of items next are the addition or the improvement on the app model data. We now have support for dependencies and supersedence for Intune packages. So you can add those app model data and also publish them to Intune. And publishing Mac packages in Intune is something that we've been hearing a lot. So we do have support for Mac OS packages for Jamf, but we did not have for Intune. So hearing customer feedback, so we added this capability for publishing Mac OS packages to Intune as well. And I think Mike demoed this, the automated PSADT migration, which is a mix of both hybrid tools and AI. If you have only a professional edition and you do not have an enterprise edition, you can still leverage the hybrid. You can still leverage the out of the box PSADT tools to do this migration, but AI augments with the addition of the app model data and does it slightly better than just the native tools. And we also introduced community bus. Mike talked about it. I'm not going to go in detail, but this is primarily to help you understand if there are any known issues, and it's an immediate chatter around a known application issue that you'd want to quickly understand before you go ahead and publish it to Intune or SCCM. Enhanced update notification support for minor versions is more of a internal support, where we have in-app application version update support. So we have enhanced that for minor versions as well. And the last one is integration of digital signature information. We also want to show which packages, from our package field module are digitally signed, so that you don't have any issues with trusting the application because it has the signature carrying from the original publisher. Or, if some items could be not be digitally signed because they're free packages, and there could be open source packages like 7-zip and all, they might not have digital signature in them. So we would advise you to say, proceed with caution on those packages that do not have a digital signature. So moving on, so we are currently working and have begun the work on our 2026 R3 release, which is the next release, which is planned for August. And this is what we have in store at this point of time, what is running in our mind in AdminStudio for the next release. And the first one, again, we, if you recall, what Mike showed about those packages that are not available in package with module, and we provide AI suggestions on install command line and uninstall command line. Now, what we also want to do is, complementing what Amit talked about in the beginning of the trust framework, is also that we also want to complement these features with enough functionality in there where you can go ahead and start performing some actions that would start instilling some trust in these recommendations or suggestions that we provide. So what we're going to do is the AI suggested install and uninstall command lines can be quickly tested in a sandbox environment. So there will be a small push button over there which says, hey, AdminStudio AI is telling me that this is the install command line, go test it. If the installation is successful, we would go ahead and put a blue tick. Blue tick is very popular with social media. So we'll go ahead and put a blue tick that it's a verified install command line. Or if it fails, okay, we would admit, and then we will say that no, this is not a good install command line. And then you can share some feedback with us that, hey, Flexera team, this is not a very good install command line or a suggestion coming in from AI. And the next one is default deployment group assignment for configuration manager. This is a journey that we have started last year, where we not just publish to Intune or configuration manager, we also deploy applications to endpoints directly. This primarily helps with testing of the packages, whether my packaging is completely good or not before I publish it to my overall enterprise endpoints. So there was a feedback on the ability to the lack of ability to create a simple default deployment group, for configuration manager connections where we will want to just go ahead and create a default one and reuse it for all applications. So we'll now have the capability to create a default group that will be reused for all applications in the catalog. Multi-schedule automations. This is one more feedback that we keep receiving is that yes, we can create automations and schedules, but then you can really do it only. There's only one provision for only one scheduled automation. So there will now be a provision for creating multiple schedules of for the automation workflows. Multi-setup package support. So this is specific for the next item is specific for certain vendors. I would say there's not a whole lot of vendors who are actually continuing to publish in this purpose, but we want to go ahead and make that friction free as well. Where there's a huge package, like 2 GB or a 3 GB package, or maybe a 6 GB package that is broken down into multiple parts by the vendor themselves, and we can import them, but then when you try to publish them, they really fails, but only publishing only a part of the package. So we'll be resolving all of those parts and publishing the entire package at one shot to the endpoint management system. So this will be supported for all endpoint management systems, including Configuration Manager, Intune, and Workspace ONE to begin with. The next one is pre-installed and configured catalog in the Azure Marketplace. And for those who do not know, AdminStudio is available as a VM, pre-configured VM in the Azure Marketplace. This is especially useful if you're an MSP or you have multiple projects running. Feel free to just go ahead and provision your own AdminStudio instance from Azure, and you go ahead and use the existing licensing on it, and nothing else is required. It's completely plug and play. AdminStudio is installed, and it is good to go ahead and use it. One thing that is missing there is it is not pre-installed or pre-configured with a catalog. So what we're going to try is we're trying to see if we can actually go ahead and ease those configuration steps by pre-creating a catalog for you. And we want to continue our journey on MSI Accelerator as well. So there are a couple of items that we're focusing on our MSI Accelerator. So for a long time, we've been hearing feedback that the manifest file cannot be edited, in line in the editor itself. We're going to add that and add a few more fix-ups to MSI Accelerator, because fix-ups are the heart of what MSI makes it successful. So we want to go ahead and provide some more fix-ups out of the box from the MSI Accelerator tooling. I think that's pretty much what we have for AdminStudio, but as usual, we are open to feedback, and if there is a particular item that you think is coming but you don't see it here, feel free to drop it in the chat or in the Q&A session, and we'll work with you, or we'll take a due diligence on whether it can make sense for a larger set of our customers, and then we'll go ahead and add it to our roadmap. With that, if there's any Q&A, we'll go ahead and take a few questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, let's go through the Q&A and see what we have. Had a couple of former colleagues to reconnect on the call, so that's always cool. Somebody asked if they're on an older version of AdminStudio and like help setting it up and getting it going. Feel free to reach out to us. Either if you know your sales representative, you can your account manager, you can reach out to them, or we have a contact us form. Either way, but we can connect you to the right team that can help you there. I think you said don't need a special license for the AI capabilities that you saw today. So that's just part of the existing capabilities. The Enterprise Edition, though, does have some more capabilities, right, than the Professional Edition. Is that right, Venkat? Yeah.
Yeah, so all the AI capabilities are available in our Enterprise Edition.
Okay.
There's no new edition that is being introduced.
Right. Question is, can we use these AI features outside the tool, like through an API? So the Enterprise Edition has both PowerShell commandlets and REST APIs, and I think there are some of those that tie into these AI capabilities. So if you want to have, get the app insights, that's just part of importing the application. I think wrapping PowerShell, that's an API call that you can make. So yeah, the AI capabilities are kind of mixed with the existing capabilities that we have APIs for. Can we set up a preference for an AI agent? I think that's already been determined we're leveraging existing AI model for these capabilities. Is that right, Venkat?
Yeah, at this point, there is no preference for
Right.
the AI agent. We use, as Amit was talking about, we use our own guardrails, and when the LLM stands behind our own firewall, and it's not hosted on your end. If there is interest, I think we'll try to look at a model where you can use your own LLMs for the the AI agent. But at this point of time, it is all provisioned by Flexera, and we incur the cost, we incur the risk as well. So we it's a two-way street. So at this point of time, we own the entire AI agent processing.
Yeah. And we do have a documentation if you want to know more about the AI model that we're using and the data that we do use and don't use. We all have that documented and available too.
Yeah.
I think there were some questions about being able to prompt, or when it comes to the repackaging, if we can provide that information. So good feedback on the upcoming release. If we can influence the AI actions, be good. It said there was a feature used. We can use the Windows Sandbox today for repackaging, as Venkat said, and then coming soon we'll be able to use that for kind of runtime testing of the application. They want to know if it can be used for this process. Now they don't say what process. I don't know, Shane, if you want to say more, but I think it's referencing the AI repackaging. Is that going to leverage the sandbox approach, or that's a separate virtual machine?
I think it's more of a repack question, the way I read it, Mike. I think there is a read more there. So I think the question reads used for this process instead of a VM. Yes, absolutely. So the sandbox is supposed to be an alternative to VM, where you do not have to provision a VM explicitly, but just leverage. I think sandbox is a Windows feature. You just have to enable the Windows feature for sandbox. Once you enable it, and then you say, testing sandbox or repackaging sandbox, you go ahead and start using the sandbox.
Yeah, Shane just replied. He said, he's asking specifically about the AI repackaging. So when I showed the demo, I was using the automated application converter that was spinning up a VM. So I don't know. I think probably at least the first iteration will need a VM for the AI repackaging, right? But perhaps we could look into seeing if we can leverage Sandbox. That may or may not work depending on the capabilities it needs.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think that is being developed as a completely independent piece, Mike, which can be used in both our conventional repackager, and also the Sandbox. There's good feedback, Sean. Thank you.
Yeah. And then there's questions about instructions on how you use PowerShell app deploy toolkit with AdminStudio. So I did paste in as a QA or question, but it's not really. But the current product documentation for AdminStudio is available there. And you can just search PSADT. But the summary is there's a version of the PowerShell app deploy toolkit. Now it's been upgraded to 4.1.8. So that's the default template that it uses now. You can swap out your own if you want. There's some placeholder values, and we have this in the documentation about like application name and version and vendor name and so forth. If you want to bring in yours, you'd have to put those placeholders in. But other than that, you can swap yours in. I did it one time and it took me like 10 minutes for a customer. So it's pretty straightforward. Or you can use ours and you can augment or modify the template that comes out of the box and add yours. But pretty quick and easy to do that. All right. I guess last call for any other questions. Some good ones that we had. So somebody's asking, is there a learning portal? So good plug for the customer community. So you go to community.flexera.com. There's a section just for community.flexera.com. And there's a section for AdminStudio. There's active forums, so you can ask questions and see all the previous questions that were asked. It's also where you get access to technical support. So if you're under active maintenance or subscription, you can get support there. And the product and license center, but there is a learning center as well, which we have a series of videos, including about a dozen or so for AdminStudio. So if you want to do some self-learning and learn more about how to use AdminStudio, you can check out the learning center. Just have to log in with your customer community login, and then you have free access to all those videos. We also have a link to, so if you want some additional help with setting up some live expert assistance, there should be a link to contact us and our partner about getting set up help and walk through and help you get further up to date with using AdminStudio. There's a question about if we have the Enterprise Edition, can we download and update the old version? Yeah, so as soon as the 2020 AdminStudio 2026 R2 is now the current release, released a week or two ago. If you are on active maintenance or subscription, you can go to the Product and License Center, which is found in the customer community, and you log in and you'll see the download link for the latest version available, as well as your activation codes, license information there. So check that out. I'll grab a direct link to the AdminStudio section community. I'll paste that in the Q&A chat for anybody that's curious. But yeah, it's R2 is available. So check it out.